Mayur Joshi, Fund Manager, Angel Broking, also joins in with his perspective on all that's fundamental. Mayur, good to have you in the show. Let's start off with the bread and butter of the day, which is IT earnings, TCS, Infosys. Break down your own assessment of the earnings and what would that mean for the stock? What's your enhanced view now?
Afternoon, Tanveer. Yes, I think the performance on the operating front, both for TCS and Infosys, was quite exemplary. If you look at the EBIT margins and the kind of volume growth, specifically in the case of Infosys, better than what estimates were. And even in the case of TCS, the EBIT margin expansion, and again, I think the bottom line performance was very superior than what most analysts on the streets had pegged. However, the larger picture still remains in terms of the guidance cut down to 8 to 9% in constant currency terms for Infosys. The cautious outlook probably portrayed by both managements, probably in the BFSI space. That is probably testimony to the fact that the discretionary spending outlook is still looking very soft. Again, Q3, Q4 traditionally weak for IT companies, so the kind of growth that they might post might be subpar going ahead. How the story will pan out FY 18 onwards, I think is a different story altogether. So I think long term the story looks very, very compelling. Valuations look extremely attractive at this point of time, but the near to medium term headwinds will still play on this IT stock. So I think the best way is to probably look at the top tier IT names in a very staggered manner at price points lower than what they are trading at this point of time. You will definitely get better entry levels, but that is the entry levels that investors should try to look out for over the next few weeks, and then probably hold on to these stocks for the next 15 to 18 months.
Okay, what else? Yeah, Tata Global Beverages, something that has been recommended in the recent past, is doing well. What is not doing well is J&K Bank, and not surprised that of course everybody knows the reason why J&K Bank is down. However, the stock has corrected quite a bit in the last couple of days. Now, Sandeep Sabharwal, my question is this: we know there is pressure. They had corporate pressure on the corporate book. Now they have a pressure on the geographical book as well, and on the largest geography arguably. Difficult, let's bring up Jammu and Kashmir Bank on the screen. So difficult to say when will this get resolved, but the fall has been quite severe on a stock which had not really gone up too much. How would you approach a J&K Bank?
So I would think that the trouble, it's very difficult for them to come out of the trouble, because initially the corporate book also had issues. On top of that, now if they have growth issues on top of that, and whatever has been happening, so it could push back any sort of recovery which was to happen by a long time. So unless and until they get a very decent size recapitalization, it might be tough. It might be a tough period for them. So I would think that it should remain a word only.
Okay, so what should be on the radar? Sandeep, we're saying that even though the markets have big fall on a particular day with large sell figures relative to the previous recent past, or positions being built, the market doesn't really necessarily have a follow through. It's happened now thrice in the last 1 month, right? Two instances I can remember offhand: the surgical strikes day and yesterday. There has just been virtually no follow through, and a lot of mid cap stocks buzzing around. What is it that you would look to add to your portfolio? What is it that you've recently added to your portfolio?
So I think we discussed this in the morning also. The fundamental basis for any big fall doesn't exist for India in specific. So obviously financially markets are globally linked, so all markets, if US markets and all will fall, we will fall together. But then whenever we get our stocks a bit cheap, we have to keep on buying them. And I think technically, I'm sure today I was watching L&T Finance Holding, which we have talked in the past also, which I think has a decent uptick potential. So I think today it seems to be on some breakout kind of mode.
L&T Finance Holdings is on a breakout mode, you think? Okay.
Yeah. So I think this could add maybe 10, 15, 20% to the stock movement. So where we have, where we were holding earlier and where we have been slowly adding is Hindustan Construction. I think the company was on your channel also in the afternoon. So I think that's a very decent story, and that's a direct play on that interest cost saving also, which I talked of. Plus they've been getting very decent orders at decent.
Plus the debt goes down, right, because of the recent modifications.
So I think the impact of all these measures in many of the stocks which are sort of fallen angels of the past is vastly underestimated.
I like the term fallen angel. Very aptly put.
So let's face it, Tanveer, they've given us City of Mumbai the only infrastructure project worth talking about.
Yeah, high
be
thought to
honest.
that. Yeah, true.
So that's true, and it's a very good company. Like in hydro project, they've done so much good work. So they had their issues. They are coming out of these issues. Then the balance sheet will improve next year. Order booking has been very huge, and I think so we don't go and buy the Lancos and the GMRs or JP Assets. What we do is we identify the better companies in the segment and stick to them. So this is one company which I think should do very well, and combined with whichever road building company you like, I think that's a good space to be in.
Have you worked out the kind of upside HCC can see from these levels? Because it's 35, and if things are working out, the cycle is turning, order inflow is picking up.
So I think peak of the stock around 140, today it's at 35, 1/4. So I think if this infra boom and the low inflation kind of scenario continues for 2-3 years, there is no reason to believe why the stock should not at least double over 2-3 years.
Fair point, Sandeep.
Let's ask technically. Sandeep Sabharwal says that there is, I mean, it's not a recommendation from him technically, but he believes that L&T Finance Holdings has potential post this breakout move today to move up further. CK, you don't have to agree with Sandeep Sabharwal, but what is your assessment of the charts of L&T Finance Holdings, because it certainly is on a tear today?
I think L&T Finance is something that has been on a bit of an improvement, but whether it would really qualify for a big hold is clearly for a longer term player, and Sandeep certainly falls in that category. Now a trader may not really fancy L&T Finance too much because it's a little bit too zippy on either side, but from a trend perspective, I think L&T Finance is doing really very well. And indeed, it is getting in line with most of the other finance-based stocks like M&M Finance or Bharat Finance, etc., which are all doing great guns. So L&T is also joining that bandwagon. And today's price action seems to be very positive, suggestive of a fresh rise, which has actually begun. And this should probably propel the stock towards, I think, 120. So Sandeep should be a happy man.
Yes, indeed, and the chart actually gives out the picture quite beautifully. From a level of 50, the stock has gained 52%, and it's like nearly double. So great going for L&T Finance Holding, and I think even for HCC, that's a stock that could be a potential re-rating candidate if the business picks up.
And then look at the stock of the day. I think Kunal Bothra has kind of had his finger and his pulse on it. Nilkamal, forget this here. I think just look at it today. Stock of the day today, Nilkamal.
That's most of the move from this year.
But 18%. So, I was skeptical when it was up 12% and Kunal said he'll go out and buy it. It's actually given a 5 or 6% more. So it's been one splendid mover. Kunal, kudos to you. Excellent call. What are the targets? Just before we get in, I think Pranay or Vivek, one of them will join in to speak about the internals. Pranay, but do we have Pranay? Oh, okay, Pranay is ready. So before I go to Kunal, Pranay, let me come to you first. So it's been pointed out on the charts, I think 4 times already in the show and maybe 10 times on the channel today. But tell us more about Nilkamal.
So yes, the charts truly reflect that it's the stock of the day. The reason why it is buzzing today, because recently there are a couple of institutions which have met up with the management, and the commentary coming through is that the management is looking at a growth of about 12 to 15% over the next 3 to 5 years with an EBITDA margin of 13 to 15% band. The current ROE, which is about 16%, they hope to improve that to about 20% through further debt reduction. Also, in organized plastic molded furniture, it is having a market share of 39%, which makes it the leader. And by the way, the organized market is about 20-25%. So more than 75% is on the unorganized side. And with the implementation of GST in about 5-6 months' time, we are going to start seeing the shift from the unorganized to the organized. That is also what the management is very bullish on, because the cost structure will shift from the production based towards the consumption side, and they are very bullish on this because of some of the other value added products which are in the pipeline for launch. They do get some revenue from materials handling and mattresses, but that is lesser than the plastic molded furniture, and which is why even if you look at a peer company, for example Wimplast, that is also giving a stellar move in today's session. Primer Plastics and Supreme Industries are the other ones. Also on valuation terms, actually Nilkamal is quoting at a lower multiple, about 17 times current year's earnings and 14.5 times 1 year forward's earning, compared to the second biggest player, which is Supreme, and that is quoting at a multiple of 50 times. That's because it has a higher EBITDA margin than Nilkamal. Also, it generates the best ROE in the business, but the differential is far too high, and also because it has a very small equity base of about 1.5 crore shares, only 65% of which are held with the promoters. You know, a couple of institutions who met up with the management, I guess they are participating in today's session from the market.
Yep, could be the case. They're clearly convinced. That's knocking at 18% just as we speak on the dot. 1573 on the stock as we get into the final wheel of trade. Mahesh, very quickly, is there an in-house view, a target in this one? Nilkamal?
So Tanveer, I think, yeah, we've liked this at lower levels, and as Pranay was mentioning, material handling and molded furniture within the plastics divisions have been doing exceptionally well for the company. Molded furniture, as Pranay was mentioning, a 39% market share, and the primary reason for their margin expansion has been fall in polymer prices, because it follows crude, and crude had fallen down drastically over the last few quarters. The polymer price advantage basically flew into the EBITDA margins. Again, I think the net debt reduction has been quite substantial over the past few quarters, and if you look at the cash flows that the company is generating, I think it is quite substantial. If you look at the other aspect in terms of how their business performance has been improving, the top line has been growing exceptionally well, and even if one assumes 11-12% top line growth, it can easily post an EPS of at least 75 rupees for FY18. So even if you give it a higher multiple, I think the upper sides probably still remain. The crude has moved up, and that might probably have a cap in terms of how margins will pan out if it stays at elevated levels. Our own sense is that with debt reduction happening on the balance sheet, cash flows will even become stronger. So again, I think valuation is the only aspect at this point of time looking expensive for Nilkamal, but clearly investors holding on to the stock at the lower level should continue holding.
Kunal, very quickly, your revised levels, it's now up 18%.
Well, I would stand with 1650 as a target. Maybe as a BTC trade, looking at the momentum, but would probably want to revise it further if it breaks 1650.
Wow, supremely confident of that 1650 number, but well, look at the stock, 18% higher and counting. This has been one unblemished move for Nilkamal today, not so much for the Nifty, but Nilkamal in particular, fabulous move. And then a bunch of other stocks today, quite frankly, that have done very, very well for themselves. I was looking at Jai Bharat Maruti. I think it's had a big move today. A company called Atlas Cycles on very good volumes is up about 20% today. There is Hercules Hoists, which is up about 16%. And then there is Maharashtra Scooters, which has gained 11% at 1857. So I think that too is doing very, very well for itself. Let's get in what dealing rooms are recommending in the session today. That and what are the closing strategies. So maybe let's just first wind up the closing strategies wrap up the closing strategies from our experts. CK, I'll come to you first. Your top closing strategy.
Well, a BTSC in Diwan Housing DHFL currently at about 300, 302, buy with a stop at 295 for a target of 310 by tomorrow.
Siddharth, your top, wow, this one is big move, 6% higher. Siddharth, your top closing strategy?
I would stick to short Infosys as a top closing strategy. I have a target of 960, 970 in mind. 1075 should be the stop loss for the short call.
And Kunal, your call?
I would want to reiterate or maybe give a fresh buy on Godfrey Phillips. The stock has broken out once again of almost like a 3-week consolidation. Somewhere close to September is where it started this consolidation process. It's broken out of that, so maybe a BTC trade is what I would recommend. A target closer to 1480 and the stop loss at 1385.
Target, what's the target you mentioned, Kunal?
1480. It's a very high beta name, so which is why I'm giving a target closer to 4.5 or 5%.
And the stop is
1385.
Okay.
Okay, that's a view coming on Godfrey Phillips. Viewers may want to note 6% higher at 1425 as we speak. Let's quickly go across and get a perspective on what dealers are talking about in the last 10 minutes of trade left. Darshan have been working their phones to give us some sense. Darshan, come to you. What are you hearing?
I think we've spoken about this counter enough, Neel Kamal, but that's been spoken about. What we hear from dealing room is that one of India's largest domestic mutual fund met the management over the past few days ago, and they are the buyers. If you're looking at the volumes itself, volumes are almost 8 lakh shares today. You know, the average is 50-60,000 shares. So, you know, this much buying only a large domestic fund can do. It is what the name that we hear is one of the top 2 domestic funds of India in terms of domestic brokerages. So they are the active buyers in Neel Kamal today. Bata and Pidilite, dealers indicate that some of the HNIs are very active, and in these counters at lower levels they are accumulating. And finally, BF Utilities is something that dealers are talking about. There is the buzz of a possible corporate announcement that could come in this counter.
Okay, fair point. Yatin, what are you picking from your sources?
Well, you know, as far as dealers are concerned, a few large caps to start with. Ultratech Cement, you know, that is one stock wherein dealers are recommending a BTST based on FNO trends. Of course, they will be declaring the quarterly results in trade next week. But Ultratech is something wherein dealers are expecting good beat as far as the second quarter results are concerned, almost 1.5% up for that one. Also watch out for Dish TV. That is one stock wherein dealers are recommending accumulating the stock at lower levels. So of course there is some volatility of 4-5% you know, on a weekly basis, but dealers are still confident that the stock would be sustaining about that 3-digit mark. And watch out for GNFC as well as Atlanta. These are the 2 stocks wherein you know, HNIs are expecting you know, 10-15% short-term upside.
Thanks a lot for that, Yatin. Now, you know, I'm just looking at Jai Bharat Maruti and the gains that it has made. And Mayuresh, that brings me to my topic of auto components. I mean, a bunch of these stocks have done so well for themselves. Is there an auto comp stock that you are recommending afresh to your clients or buying in your PMS schemes?
Well, again, Neeraj, I think the performance has been quite stupendous for a whole host of these auto component companies, whether they be battery makers, tires, looking at wire harness equipment players as well, and you're looking at the other auto components, something like Aminda. So I think all these companies have done exceptionally well. Though the case for battery makers still remains extremely strong. If one really assumes 2-wheelers and 4-wheelers to produce decent volume growth on the back of tepid volume growth over the last 2 years, let it be for good monsoons or the pay commission recommendations probably having a further offtake for the same. My own sense is that the battery makers will do well. Have moved up over the past few weeks and quarters, but again I think the pass-through will be very evident. So any decline onto the battery makers, I think become a good viable investment option, but again it has to be on declines, because I think all these stocks have basically moved up quite drastically over the last few weeks and quarters.
Okay. By the way, Neel Kamal is just approaching the circuit levels. I don't know, we just discussed that stock so much on the show today, but yep, deserves the mention, almost up 20%. Okay, a few other stocks, in which CK, a GAIL and a Petronet, both the stocks doing well. Would you do a trade on either of these? And then we'll do Z, of course, but GAIL and Petronet, CK.
Well, I would be a buyer in GAIL. See, Petronet has been on a complete runaway mode. So, unless you had got into it a little bit earlier, maybe a little difficult to get into it now. But then the flip side is that it just doesn't seem to want to stop. It just keeps on chalking up newer gains. So while somebody holding it must be having an exhilarating ride, it doesn't really make for very low risk entry point here. So it would, between the two, the choice would have to fall upon GAIL. GAIL has been recently a little bit volatile, but then it's maintaining an upward bound, and I think at the current price levels, once it is able to clear something like 415.20 rather decisively, then it would be on its way towards something like 440-460 band. That is what I would be looking for by creating a long position on GAIL. I would be very comfortable buying GAIL even on a dip down till about 400 rupees.
Kunal, quick word on Tata Global. You've been particularly noticing this stock. It's now just starting to move up, trading at the day's high. Would you buy it?
Yes, Neeraj. In fact, earlier I had a stop loss closer to 146. The stop loss had gotten triggered, but the stock has come back again quite strongly. In fact, both Tata Global and Tata Coffee, I think CK sir has mentioned Tata Coffee as one of his trade ideas, but I think both of them are looking very attractive. Tata Global is just about giving that confirmation of a breakout, so maybe a reiteration of a buy on the same.
So that a word on the loser today, and that is Z. It's not had a great day today. By any thoughts here?
They don't track it very closely, but then yeah, it's not just first day, it's a second day of stock moving down. Has some support around 508, 510 levels. Beyond that, I wouldn't comment much on Z.
Second worst loser, or quite frankly. Okay, Mayuresh, we'll get a detailed answer, but quick thought. Any stocks that you're recommending as a buy right now, mid cap space of the market?
No, so something like Bharat Electronics is something that I'll still pursue. The own sense of Defense Acquisition Council clearing projects worth $50 billion odd, internal R&D, clean balance sheet, no debt on its books at all, and the kind of hiccups that we probably saw in Q1, I think those hiccups might not get repeated. The kind of order book that it has got in excess of 32,000 crores, 4.5 times trailing 12-month revenue, gives good revenue visibility, margins expected to get maintained between 17.5%, and again valuation is not too expensive. So any decline onto a stock like Bharat Electronics, I think it becomes a good opportunity for long-term investors.
Okay, let's start wrapping up the market. Mayuresh, hold that thought for a bit. GAIL is holding out about 4% in the session. There's L&T which is up about 2.5% as we speak. The index, there's not much to talk about there because it's been very range bound, 8550, 8600 at best. Volatile within that range, but that's the only takeaway from the headline indices today. Likewise for the Sensex, pretty much the same case for the mid cap and the small cap indices. I told you about GAIL, I told you about L&T, Tata Motors, DVR, Tata Motors holding out. Reliance Industries done well. It's been an area of interest for investors. It seems like the last few sessions, the oil and gas space, given what's happening with oil prices globally. ONGC closes up, BPCL closes up. The earnings majors in the session today, so TCS, about 1.5% gain coming in there. Infosys still reeling under some pressure with the guidance cut being disappointing. So 2.5% down there. Neeraj was highlighting Z Entertainment, primary loser for this week, down 3.5% today too. Bharti Infratel, HUL, Idea Cellular, Eicher Motors, all of them seeing weakness in trade.
The broader end of the spectrum, I think Petronet stands out. Big move there, 5.5%. Tata Global Beverages about 4%. Bajaj Holdings has that 3.5% move. And then we haven't quite discussed a Glenmark or a Motherson, but I think they've had some fairly decent moves in the session today. Both Glenmark as well as Motherson Sumi, so good going there. Indiabulls Housing Finance about a couple of percentage points. Bajaj Finserv a couple of percentage points. Ashok Leyland clawing its way back to 80. So not a bad day for that one either. MRF has had a bit of a dull day, so has JSW Steel, but these stocks have gained so much the last few days that it's okay. Then on the smaller end of the market, I think Nilkamal stands out. It's an upper circuit, if I'm not wrong. There is an upper circuit for Ramco Industries, so two stocks today by Kunal, and both have done well. Atlas Cycles is 20% higher. There is strength in Jai Bharat Maruti, up about 17%, good going for that one. And Maharashtra Scooters up about 12.5%, so very good going. And Tata Global Beverages, Tata Coffee, something that CK has been referring to, have also had a fairly decent day for themselves. Aptech is done well, up about 8% as well, so good going. But it is Infosys which is the top draw, and hear out Vishal Sikka as he speaks to Chandra on how the quarter went by and how the quarters ahead could be like.
No, I think that our approach on guidance, as I have said before, is to make sure that what we see is what we talk about, what we say it as we see it, as one of the analysts said it today.